What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Playbook Sports Podcast. This is Nate coming at you guys with a free agent predictions video. Earlier on in this off-season cycle, I did a video that's kind of trying to predict what the top contracts were going to look like. Just kind of a very basic start, dipping a toe into the free agent cycle. Now I'm all the way in. I dove right into the deep end, and I'm going to do a free agent offensive video and a free agent defensive video. And the way I based this was all on similar contracts for players of similar caliber in years past, and then leaning on those players' injury histories and then different team needs. Not everybody needs the same thing. So let's dive into this free agency 2024. Before we get into today's video, guys, I just want to give a special shout out to today's sponsors, starting with Goldfine & Bowles, Lawyers for the Injured. Personal injury, workers' compensation, those are their two things, but any sort of legal advice, they're the people to call. Give them a phone call, 309-673-5144. Tell them we sent you, okay? And I'd also like to shout out SeatGeek for sponsoring today's video as well. Use promo code PlayBookSports on their website to get $20 off your first purchase of $30 or more. Let's get back to the video. To start, I'm starting at the primo position, the most important position in all of sports, and that's going to be quarterback. And the number one quarterback in the 2024 free agent class is very clear. It is Mr. Kirko Chains, Mr. Kirk Cousins. Best available QB in free agency this year, and there are a number of teams that are going to be calling his phone. Vikings, obviously, are going to want him back. Broncos would probably love to have him. I'm sure Sean Payton thinks he could run the offense real well with Kirk Cousins. But you also have the Raiders, Falcons, Patriots. Basically, if you aren't set or very confident at your quarterback position and you do not have one of the top picks, and maybe you don't love one of the three, like the Patriots, for example, say they don't love the third quarterback that falls to them, right? Those teams should all be on the phone with Kirk Cousins and his agent trying to bring him in. My prediction for Kirk Cousins is I think he'll go to the best landing spot for him, and that is back with Minnesota and Kevin O'Connell. That's where he's from. That's where he's played the last several years. He's got good rapport with the weapons. He was balling out before he got hurt this year. So my prediction for Kirk Cousins is a 2-year, fully guaranteed $85 million contract to run it back for 2 more years. Maybe even that could be a slight underpay in this market. I mean, you're going to see quarterbacks get 50, 55 a year. Jordan Love, Tua, Dak, all in line for big old extensions. This number is going to go up, 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 guys. We're not far away from $70 million a year quarterbacks. We're just not that far away from that. But I think Kirk takes a little bit of a discount here, comes back. They're able to get Justin Jefferson locked in for a few years, and they say, all right, this is our chance, let's send it. So Kirk Cousins back to Minnesota, 2 years, $85 million. Second quarterback I want to talk about, again, I'm going to talk about all these positions, but only a few people at each position. Second quarterback I want to talk about, Mr. Baker Mayfield. There were reports out today he may command $100 million in free agency. I don't know about all that. Very polarizing quarterback. You either love him or you hate him. Very few people are lukewarm on him. I mean, he had a great year with Tampa Bay this year. Took a team that I personally didn't think was going to be any good. Took them to the playoffs. Playoff victory over the Eagles. They were supposed to be bad, and he turned them into a good team. They competed. He's going to be 29 in about a month, so still young for a QB. I think he's going to take a look at the Geno Smith contract in Seattle and just go just north of that. I think he's going to sign about a 3-year deal worth around $80 million, so a little less than the 30 a year, but more than the 25 that Geno got. And I just don't see how the Bucs let him get out of the building. I don't think he goes anywhere. I know that both Bucs and Baker are working on an extension already, so they're already looking at the facts, the numbers, everything around it. And I think Baker Mayfield's going to stick in Tampa Bay, and maybe he'll be the best quarterback in that division next year, depending on what happens with Atlanta. So, third and final quarterback I want to talk about here, and whoever you have, you may think there's a different set of quarterbacks you want to talk about. There may be a different number 3 quarterback that you like more. Maybe you like Jameis Winston more. I like Gardner Minshew. I like what he brings to the table. It reminds me a little bit of Baker Mayfield, honestly. Earned himself a little bit of money. Nearly got the Colts in the playoffs. Won them 9 games. Arguably the best backup option on the market. You can have him. He can win you games. He's not just a stopgap guy. He can win you some football games. I don't see him getting a big deal money-wise, but he might make some really good backup quarterback money. And a couple seasons. Honestly, I look at the Mike White contract with Miami last year. 2 years, about $7.5 million a year. Decent money, but nothing crazy. Maybe even a little bit less than that. I could see him signing with a team to be the backup for a young quarterback, play the mentor role, maybe start early season if the rookie isn't ready. I think the Broncos are a pretty good landing spot for J.J. McCarthy, which means I think they're a pretty good landing spot for Baker Mayfield, Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew did great with Anthony Richardson last year. He's a good mentor quarterback. If Sean Payton likes him, Minshew makes a ton of sense in Denver to me. Colts also make a ton of sense here as well, but it's boring if I have all three quarterbacks go back to their same team. I'm not going to do it. So I am going to predict Gardner Minshew signing with the Denver Broncos. 2 years, $12 million to mentor a rookie quarterback that they are definitely going to draft. They don't have a quarterback right now because Russ is not staying. They need something. Gardner Minshew is a great stopgap quarterback. So that's it for the quarterbacks. Let's get into the running backs. And now I typed this up today, and it has changed already because of the combine going on and everything. But let's go ahead and start with the number one free agent running back, and that is Mr. Saquon Barkley. Top free agent running back. Played ball with the Giants. Played on a one-year deal with them last year. Very risky for a running back, but he played really well. Only 27, tough as nails runner, would thrive in short yardage. As a short yardage back and can still just kind of do it all, and could play for a coach that likes to lean on the ground game and for a team that just lost a running back. Now, I will say, after I typed this up, Saquon Barkley came out and was apparently interested in the Houston position. That'd be a great spot for him. That's not where I have him predicted, though. I've got him landing with Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman out in L.A. Hear me out. I know the Chargers are in a really crappy cap situation, but they can make it work. And Saquon Barkley is a stud running back. You can lock him in for 3 years, $30 million. And it is the front office's responsibility to give Justin Herbert every single weapon he can ever want and try and just get that offense to go. That's their best chance. It's not going to be defense, not right now. You've got Herbert. You need to just give him weapons. And no, it may not be financially responsible to pay a running back $10 million. It just doesn't seem to work very well. But I think that the priority is getting Herbert rolling. And I like Chargers to lock in Saquon Barkley here if he doesn't go to the Texans, which is also a good landing spot for 3 years, $30 million. Next running back I've got listed here, Josh Jacobs. NFL's leading rusher just a few seasons ago, not being used very effectively under Josh McDaniel, but he really turns it around when Antonio Pierce took over. 90 or more rushing yards in 3 of the 5 games with Pierce. And Pierce has just spoke glowingly about Saquon Barkley. He loves himself some Saquon Barkley, which is a great sign for him. He called him the heartbeat of the Raiders offense. Reunion makes a ton of sense for both of them. He's only 26 years old. I like Josh Jacobs back to the Raiders on a little more money than Saquon Barkley. 3 years, $34 million for Mr. Josh Jacobs. Next running back I want to talk about is the King Henry. And while no, maybe he's not sitting on the throne anymore, he's still got some juice in those legs. So what team could use a power running back to complement maybe their lightning fast quarterback? I like Baltimore. They've got a history of signing these older running backs and just getting every last drop of talent out of them. Just getting every bit of juice left out of those legs. And I think he'll sign a nice 1-year, $9 million deal with Baltimore, probably heavily incentive-laden. But I think he'd be awesome as kind of the thunder to the lightning of Lamar Jackson. Keaton Mitchell with the big injury at the end of the year last year. How good's he going to be? J.K. Dobbins is a free agent. He just can't stay on the field, poor guy. Derrick Henry is Mr. Consistency. He is Mr. Pound the Rock. I like Derrick Henry to Baltimore. 1 year, $9 million. A lot of incentives in that contract, though. Last running back I want to talk about, Mr. Tony Pollard. Unfortunately, he did not take off like I had hoped and thought he honestly would. Averaged a career worst 4 yards a carry this past year for Dallas. And Dallas is going to be trying to juggle their cap space this year to fit in Dak's probable extension to give him more money because he's earned it. Looking at the CD Lamb extension coming up, looking at Micah Parsons extension coming up, you cannot pay Tony Pollard. You just can't do it. He didn't distinguish himself anyways, so I think he's allowed to go. And I think he's going to walk right into division rival Philadelphia's lap. Pollard was awesome with Kellen Moore. That's where Kellen Moore is now. He just rejoins his old OC. Philly is probably going to let DeAndre Swift walk in free agency, and they're going to put Tony Pollard behind maybe the best offensive line in football, depending on what Jason Kelce does, obviously. But I'm predicting Philadelphia Eagles, 2 years, $12 million, $6 million a year, and he goes and he's great for Philadelphia probably. I do have a couple of running backs that just missed my list. Obviously, you're like, where's Austin Eckler? Where's DeAndre Swift? They didn't make my top 4 for this exercise. Obviously, I think they'll probably be about the $6 to $7 million a year range as well, right in that middle range. No one's paying top dollar for a running back. They just aren't anymore. So All right, moving on to wide receiver. I've got 3 listed here to talk about, and you can put them really in any order. But let's start with Mr. Consistency, Mike Evans. Obviously, T. Higgins was just tagged, so I'm not including him here, although he could still be like a trade candidate. But Mike Evans, number 1 available free agent wide receiver, in my opinion, just because he's done it. 10 straight seasons, 1,000-plus receiving yards. That's unheard of. That's unbelievable consistency. And when you think of consistency at the wide receiver position, there's a team that definitely doesn't come to mind, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs. And I know that this has just been talked about and talked about and talked about. And I'm sure the Chiefs are going to draft a wide receiver in the first, if not the first, definitely the second round of this year's draft. But Mike Evans has been so solid. Pair him up with Mahomes. Let him go. And I know Kansas City is going to struggle with cap, but you're in your window, and your window's the entire time Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback. But you need an alpha wide receiver to help take some of the pressure off of Rashee Rice and an aging Travis Kelce. I've got them signing Mike Evans to a big old contract. 3 years, $72 million. Everyone that is listening to this is probably freaking out right now because they're like, what? No, they have to sign L'Jarius Sneed. They have to sign Chris Jones. I don't think they're going to sign L'Jarius Sneed. And maybe they sign Chris Jones and they backload the contract in some way. I think they make it work. I think they bring in Mr. Mike Evans, and he is their new number 1, and Rashee Rice is 1B, 1A, 1B, and you got Travis Kelce, and you got some speedsters, and that Kansas City offense just continues to get better and better. Second wide receiver I want to talk about is Michael Pittman Jr. from the Indianapolis Colts. I can't believe he hasn't been tagged yet. I know he still has some time to be tagged. Can't believe they haven't tagged him yet. I think the only reason they haven't tagged him is because they've got to be getting close to a long-term deal with him, because you do not let someone like him walk out the door. He has been their number 1 receiver for the last several seasons since they drafted him. Colts have the money. This is a no-brainer. This is a good old slam dunk no-brainer signing at predicting him to the Colts. 4 years, $88 million. Last wide receiver I want to talk about is Calvin Ridley. Kind of tricky to predict. You don't exactly know what you're getting out of Calvin Ridley at this point, which is crazy. He's only 29 years old. Very solid. Over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns last year for the Jags. But it was also his first complete season since his rookie year. He's 29. How many years do you give a 29-year-old wide receiver? I do think that the Jaguars are going to recognize the need at the position. Christian Kirk probably shouldn't be your number 1. And the offense struggled, but it wasn't because of Calvin Ridley. He was still really solid. Give him another year with Trevor Lawrence, another year in that offense, and I think they'll be a lot better. And there's just no one there to replace that kind of production for the Jags. They're not going to, maybe they draft a wide receiver, but for free agency, I think you do the sure thing here. Give Trevor Lawrence a great route runner and Calvin Ridley, and just let him keep Calvin Ridley, obviously, and just don't rock the boat too much and try and figure out what went wrong last year and fix it. So I'm predicting Calvin Ridley to the Jacksonville Jaguars, 3 years, $50 million. Just missed wide receiver Hollywood Brown. Not a whole lot to say about him, honestly. I do think he's probably the 4th best receiver available, 4 or 5, wherever you want to put him. Not sure where he's going to go. Not sure what the market will be for him. So I left him out of this exercise. Next up, we're going into the tight end. One tight end I want to talk about, and that's Dalton Schultz. Turned down a really good deal from Dallas last year, betting on himself. Went to Houston for 1 year and did solid. Wasn't spectacular. Wasn't terrible. Very solid season with him. It was really a win-win situation for Dallas and him. He went out, showed he was worth his money. And Dallas was able to show, well, we're good because we got Jake Ferguson, who was awesome for them this past season. So both teams, an amicable split there. He is a dependable tight end, and that's what you want for a young quarterback. Good for 600 yards, 5 touchdowns every single season. Look at the averages of his seasons, and he is good for 600 yards and 5 touchdowns at least every year. I would be hesitant to overpay him, because overpaying for a tight end, unless that tight end is a game-changing tight end, doesn't always work out so well. But I do think that with the money they have, plenty of money, keep him in-house, let C.J. Stroud continue to work with that safety blanket of a very dependable tight end, and I think they keep him at 3 years, $30 million. The only other 2 tight ends I thought about discussing and ultimately decided against were Hunter Henry and Noah Fant. They just don't excite me, I'll be honest. I'm not too thrilled about either of them. We'll just talk about Dalton Schultz, and we'll move on to the offensive tackle position. Number 1 tackle in free agency talent-wise, in my opinion, is 33-year-old Tyron Smith out of Dallas. Yes, you have the injury concerns. Yes, you have the age concerns. But man, when he's on the field, is he damn good. He is very, very good when he's on the field. And Dallas has Tyler Smith playing at an all-pro level at guard. And the idea is, well, if Tyron goes, we just kick Tyler Smith out to left tackle. I hate that. I don't like that. He was amazing at left guard. Don't ruin that. He was the best left guard in football last year. You have two of the, if not the two best offensive guards on your offensive line in Zach Martin and Tyler Smith. Don't ruin that. I know that the Cowboys have a cap situation to figure out, but you've got to move some money around and keep him. Even cheap, 1 year, $7 million deal. That's all it's going to take for something like this. He's old. He's injury riddled. It's probably a last ride for him. I don't see many other teams chomping at the bit to get him. I think he'll want to stay in Dallas. Let's just not rock the boat here. Dallas, 1 year, $7 million. And then the other offensive tackle I want to talk about, probably the more sought-after free agent tackle, not talent-wise in my opinion, but because he's younger, that's Jonah Williams coming out of Cincinnati this year. Did kind of take a step back as they transitioned him over to the right tackle side, but he wasn't terrible, which shows versatility. He can play left, he can play right. Put him at either tackle position, he's going to be in business. Only 27 years old. Number of teams could use his services. However, I think he's going to be a Tennessee Titan. Titans need offensive linemen, and they're probably going to draft one at 7, sure, but you still need a vet presence on that offensive line. You're still going to need a right tackle as well, and Jonah Williams can play right tackle. Also, not to mention, Titans just hired his former offensive coordinator, Brian Callahan, to be his head coach, and they just need offensive guys. Former first-round pick, he can play a reliable, albeit not spectacular, left and right tackle. That's somebody you want on your offensive line and somebody who will be familiar with Callahan's scheme. So I've got Jonah Williams going to Tennessee on a 4-year, $44 million deal, getting good money to be a dependable tackle. Next up, we're going into the offensive guards. My best guard in free agency, I've got Kevin Dotson here. He was awesome for the Rams. Since they've acquired him in a trade, he has been fantastic. I think he's going to get the biggest contract for a guard. And I don't move him. I think he stays right where he is. Stay in LA. They're in a good cap situation finally. They can afford him. I do think Kevin Dotson stays in LA, and he is a Ram for 4 years, $65 million, getting himself a real nice contract. And then second guard I've got on here is big Robert Hunt. My man, love Robert Hunt. Second round pick of Miami in 2020. Initially, they tried him out at tackle. Didn't work out. Kicked him into guard. He's been one of the best guards in football ever since. Only 27 years old. He's going to cash in. I'm really hoping the Dolphins retain him. Might price himself out. And another team that may be looking to get him that could dangle, Super Bowl in front of him would be San Francisco. They need to overhaul that offensive line. They've got one offensive lineman you can pencil in next year, and that is Trent Williams. Robert Hunt is a great guard, but San Francisco's in a similar cap situation to Miami. And that being said, I think a little bit of hope, of course, but I also do think that Hunt just stays put. I think Hunt stays in Miami. 4 years, $48 million, $12 million a year, a little bit pricey, but he has been awesome and he has been steady. This past season he had some injuries, and that was the first time he's ever dealt with injuries. He's been on the field. He's been dependable. Big fan of Robert Hunt. Would hate to see him go. So I've got him staying in Miami 4 years, $48 million. And last but not least, on the offensive side of the ball, let's move to the centers. And I'm going to start with the first center who will not be ready to play week 1, and that makes this real tricky. And it's going to require a lot of work from the guys creating these contracts to make this make sense. But Connor Williams, prior to tearing his ACL, he has been being graded by PFF as the best center in football. Last year, #1 center per PFF. An amazing run blocker, getting better and better at pass blocking as a center with his snaps as well. He was awesome, and Miami just moved him from guard to center, and he was playing fantastic, in line for a huge contract. And then in December, he tore his ACL. And it sucks that it was in the middle of December because that all but guarantees he's going to miss the start of the season for sure. He will be hard-pressed to make it back by mid-season. That's tough to do, and that's tough to sell, that you have to pay this guy good money, and you do not get him. You do not get to watch him play for at least probably 6 or 7 weeks. That's tough. It makes his free agency a little trickier than everyone else. He will be signed, but any team that needs a center week 1 is going to look elsewhere probably. And if Jason Kelce does retire, I think Philadelphia could be really interested in his services, especially because he's versatile. He can play the 3 interior offensive line positions. I think Philly might like him. I also think Miami might hang on to him. I am going to go ahead and say he goes to Philadelphia on a 5-year, $65 million contract and assume Jason Kelce retires and that they need a center. They still have Cam Jurgens and Landon Dickerson. They can kick one of them to center for the time being, but you have an opportunity to get what was graded out as the best center last year. Now, is he the best center? No. But he was graded out by PFF as the #1 center last year. And I don't think you can pass on that. And if I'm Miami, I'm sick because I want him back too, but I want to draft a center as well, so it's tough. It's tough, and you're gambling on him coming back and playing at that high level. And if he goes to Philadelphia, he's going to be awesome. We already know it. They just have offensive line magic. I don't understand it. But I've got Connor Williams going to Philadelphia on a 5-year, $65 million deal. And then last but not least, let's talk about Mr. Tyler Biadasz, the Cowboys center. I do think he's going to be the most sought-after center in the free agency class because Connor Williams is hurt. Now, he won't make the most money, spoiler alert, but he will be the most sought-after because he's been super dependable. He's young, 26, 27, played 16-plus games the last 3 seasons. Super consistent. He's played like a top 10 center, and he was a 4th-round pick. Guy's a stud, stays on the field. Any center-needy team will be on the phone with him trying to bring him in. And a team that has a ton of cap space and is very center-needy, Chicago Bears. I really like the fit of Tyler Biadasz to the Chicago Bears. He's athletic. He's not just this big guy that you just set in the center and he just stays put. He's athletic. He can get out and block. And I think you just continue to build that offensive line. You've got your tackles in Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright. You need to build a center. You need a center. And Tyler Biadasz will be available. You're not going to draft one at pick 1 or 9. Maybe you're hoping to get one in the 2nd. But I think you just go ahead and bite the bullet, get the stud. 4 years, $45 million for Tyler Biadasz. That is all I've got for you guys on my free agency predictions today. Stay tuned for the defensive side of the ball that will be coming out shortly here. And then also stay tuned for the Fixing Your Franchise series that is coming out. I just had the Packers one come out. Addison's got a couple coming out. Colin, Sage, they've all got these teams coming out. Let us know if you want us to fix your team down in the comments below. If you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel. The draft is coming up. Free agency is coming up. We live and breathe off-season stuff. We've got more mock drafts coming your guys' way. So stay tuned for all of that. And thanks for stopping in, and we'll see you guys in the next one.